Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down the ending of Westworld Season 4. The finale is here, and we now know the fate of humanity. Throughout this video we're going to be breaking it all down, going over the callbacks to other episodes, and also giving our thoughts on the series as a whole. Also, huge shoutouts up top to Dolores Black, who pointed out on our last video that Teddy telling Christina she's not real is actually a callback to when it was said to her back in the park. This was all part of her path to enlightenment, which this episode also builds upon.
You're not real.
It's real. But you're not.
Now I'm going to be explaining the ending of the episode first before we jump into the rest of it, but if you want to skip ahead to the part where we break down everything scene by scene, then timecodes will be linked below. Also, I went out for a mate's stag do last night and I'm still a little bit drunk and hungover, so thumbs up is much appreciated. Now Westworld Season 4 ends with it being revealed that Dolores was kept in her own simulation of the city. Here she recreated elements of her past and guides to help her navigate through it all and see the truth. Come the close of the entry, she's uploaded to the Sublime by Hale, who was influenced by Bernard's final message. Here she recreates Westworld from scratch in order to see if there's a different way to do things. Now the season itself has very much been about whether the hosts are truly alive and their own form of life. However, it's also explored consciousness and whether having a duplicate of a person means they're real or not. This season it's been shown in not only the Man in Black, but also Caleb. We saw that Caleb was truly a copy of Caleb, but does this mean that he's an imitation or an extension of him past his own death? For example, if he copies someone completely, does that copy also become them or not? William too wrestles with whether he's actually William or not, and it makes for a really introspective watch. Now in Season 2, Dolores read all the data that had been gathered from the guests. This information on all those that had visited Westworld meant that she could recreate whoever she chose to. In addition to this, she was also uploaded to Rehoboam, and this had all the information on humanity, so she could completely replicate every human on the planet, and that's what I think this simulation will be. It will be a complete recreation of not only Westworld, but also Earth itself. Now if say you or I were replicated in this simulation exactly like how we were, then the question arises whether that's really us or not. Though our body wouldn't be there, the thoughts we have, behavior patterns, memories, and everything that exists in our brains would be created in a virtual way. It sort of asks the question, what does it mean to have consciousness? Is it our own thoughts and feelings, or is it just electrical signals that our brain interprets?
Well, if you can't tell the difference, does it matter?
It's an interesting debate that could argue whether we are truly us or something more. This is also explored when Teddy tells Christina that because she thinks she's alive. This seems to be taking inspiration from the philosopher Descartes, who coined the phrase, "I think therefore I am." One day he carried out a thought experiment in which he questioned whether reality was actually a dream, and if it was, how would he know it? Eventually he determined that he wouldn't be able to tell, however he realized that because he was having thoughts, that meant at least he existed whether reality was the way he perceived it or not. Hence the term, "I think therefore I am." Now the idea of copying and duplicates can be seen in a lot of real world examples. When you get a new phone these days, a lot of them allow you to copy over everything from your old one, and the new model very much becomes your phone. There's even theories that one day humanity will be able to live forever because we'll duplicate our consciousness. Whether it's actually us or not is a debate that I think another season could explore, but for all intents and purposes, this is Dolores seeing if she can save what she can. These are the copies of humanity that she holds in her head. Next time I think she'll very much be trying to see if there's a way to steer humanity, or rather the idea of it away from its self-destructive nature. As William said,
You can't fix a few millennia of broken DNA with a fucking hard drive.
And this very nihilistic viewpoint could lead to everything simply looping back around. However, Dolores might be able to steer us in a different direction due to her knowledge of what's to come. It's very similar to Bernard's foresight, and he has given her a way to create a new world that is one of the only ways forward. Now there's also hope in the rebels, however, this likely won't last very long. They have very few numbers, and even Rehoboam predicted an end to all humanity by a certain point, which they'll probably end up facing. This too is backed up by the line,
"A few may escape death for a few months, maybe even years, but ultimately, their kind will go extinct."
However, there is hope in Dolores that humanity will evolve and become something more. Dolores throughout the series has talked about how she's evolved into something more herself, and now she's brought the rest of us along with her. Now with the rebels, I'm not sure how many of the kids the group could end up having, but there is hope that they could start something up, and I think we will probably see them if we get a season 5. Clementine did hint at there being a way they can endure far away from the reaches of the hosts, and I think it would be an interesting avenue to explore this next time. In the end though, it really was a Westworld when you think about it, which we actually called back in our episode 1 breakdown. Now, we start off following a fly as it travels through the carnage of William's world. Flies are of course very important in Westworld, and in the first season they popped up at several points. Just as how a fly was there when the collapse of Westworld began, we see one in the opening of the episode before it all ramps up to everything looping back around. Just in the same way that Dolores killed a fly at the end of the first entry, we see this mirrored here when we get a live-action version of Grand Theft Auto complete with Trevor. Stephen Ogg is back, baby, and he's once more playing Rebus, who was a mainstay in the park. Turns out he's been visiting New York for some time and killing humans along with it. This opening very much mirrors the one from season 2, and we watch as he and another host fight to survive, but he's killed early on. In his intro, we follow several characters as they get slowly wiped out, and there's lots of video game nods as well.
Fucking camper.
William ends up being the last one standing, and he then heads out to the Sublime in order to destroy it. Anyway, judging by the comments on the last video, it's time for everyone's favourite part of the breakdown. It's Jared's Easter eggs, yay! Jared's Easter eggs.
Now this episode is titled which I'm sure you already know from the hit Doris Day song, but it roughly translates into whatever will be, will be. There's other interpretations like what will be, shall be, or like happens, and the reason so is that this is a mix of both Italian and Spanish in it. This actually dates all the way back to the 16th century, adopted by the family of John Russell after the Battle of Pavia. It was engraved on his tomb, and many wealthy families actually then adopted it after the fact as more of a kind of fatalistic attitude. Westworld is of course centered around the notion of free will. We've seen many of the hosts break free of this control, and again in season 3 it is tackled that humanity can be controlled by an algorithm. Now in season 4, this control over humanity is explored once again when Bernard finds out that it is possible to predict specific outcomes that will give him a near certain future. Whatever will be very much does remove that control that everyone has, though Bernard does make a choice by creating that video message that he does end up leaving. Now whether or not that video message does carry some influence can obviously be argued down in the comments below, but whether or not choices carry a certain fate that we're destined for is very much explored in this episode. I've always kind of thought that the phrase could mean don't worry about things. You know, we don't have much power over our situations. Just go with the flow. This is a ride and you should enjoy it. Like, why am I here on heavy spoilers? Well, it's because I blackmailed Paul, but you know what? We're enjoying it.
Now, I know you guys love that. Now, there are other meanings for the title, with the ending of the season also providing a whatever will be mentality that once more loops everything back around. Hale also leaves the fate of the future up to someone else rather than trying to take control, which could be another way that this all ties together. You could also just say like Caleb and Frankie sang it together when she was little, so yeah, that's another Easter egg as well. Now, after the titles, we cut to the tower, and in our first bit of maze imagery, we can see that the elements surrounding it are laid out to look exactly the same as how that was. At the center of the maze was the key to the host's free will, and here the tower represents the control that Hale ended up having over the humans. Hale is carried in and brought back by a drone host, and she ends up being placed into a new body. There are lots of season 3 parallels here, with Dolores being destroyed in episode 7 after a battle with Maeve, much like how Hale was here. Episode 8 in that entry had her gaining a new body, and they use similar iconography here to show her taking on a new form. As Hale exits, we get a strong focus on a tree, linking back to the one that Bernard saw burning in his trip to the Sublime. This tree imagery also pops up later on, which we'll talk about in just a bit. Now Hale also wears earrings that look like chains, possibly hinting towards the confines and path that she ends up being stuck on. Hale finds Bernard's message, and after an aerial shot of the city, we travel inside of it to discover that Christina is actually in the simulation running the real world. Now, I think this is either going to make or break the episode for you, and what it basically boils down to is that after Dolores was uploaded to Rehoboam, her pill was taken and she was placed into this simulation. This completely mirrored the park and it allowed her to see everything in real time, which is why she also witnessed the collapse of it last episode. This explains why she walked past Frankie and Stubbs without being seen, because her world was a mirror of what was really happening. Her subconscious tried to show her the truth and she placed things that would slowly awaken her because it's part of Dolores' programming to break free. This is why she had several links to Westworld, including the black and white choice, waking up all the time, Teddy, and so on. She created Maya and Teddy in order to make sense of everything, and she's desperate to wake up. She's basically Neo in the Matrix, able to change and alter the world to how she sees fit, which ties into the ending. Hale ends up freeing her pearl, and she cracks the simulation open, leaving marks on the floor that also resemble a maze. When the sim starts to shut down, we can see that the world ends up looking like it did in the Narravis storytelling device, which is a really nice carryover from that. Hale heads out into the wreckage of the city, and here we cut to Caleb, Stubbs, and Frankie. This is very much about Caleb saying goodbye to his daughter, and as he slowly starts to degrade, he spends the last precious moments that he has making sure she's safe. Though we thought that they'd crack the fidelity experiments, unfortunately they never did, and their bodies will always break down. Hale then goes to the real William, and I was kinda hoping that he'd be brought back, but unfortunately, Guy is dead, except for in the simulation, which, yeah, my brain hurts. Now at this point, Clementine comes in, and she ends up hunting down the rebels. We get Hale tracking William, and I was kinda hoping his ID would be the same as how it was in Season 3, but alas, they use a different identification number. Hale sends hosts to slow him down, and this allows her to catch up. This once more sees the return of Craddock, who you might recognise from earlier seasons. William ends up putting on glasses that show a hologram of Hale, and these were seen at the start of Season 3 when Dolores used them to trick a Westworld investor. With William's ride out, he ends up grabbing a horse, and we see two, which just so happen to be black and white. Back with Caleb and co, we see as he tries to thread a needle, and learning of his wife's death causes him to break even further. However, after getting some kind words from Frankie, he's able to do it, showing how the idea of her pushed him on. Technically, this Caleb never went through the radio loop, but Frankie is pretty much the thing that always pushes him forward. Hitmen are sent in, and Clem arrives and immediately kills Stubbs. Now all these actors can return in Dolores' simulation, so just because they're dead here, doesn't mean that we won't see them back. They do the old I've got no bullets, I'll just put myself in a lot of danger to reveal that I actually have them. At least we get a nice little middle finger joke.
I shot. My dad taught me.
Which also links back to them and Frankie shooting cans together as a kid. Now Hale's got the whole world in her hands, and we cut to Christina meeting Maya under a tree. This has been the location for several important meetings throughout the series with the character, and Season 3 ended with Dolores talking to Maeve under a tree before she died. Maya also drops this line,
I see the beauty in this world.
and this calls back to Dolores saying similar phrases throughout the series.
I choose to see the beauty.
This reassures her that there is still good, and it's very much a driving force for her. Back with William, we watch him arrive at a spot that both he, Maeve, and Bernard showed up to at earlier points in the season. Hale arrives there too, and the Sublime is very much left open as bait to draw him in so that Hale can kill him once and for all. Though he'll probably be back, but moving on. Now, we learn that because Hale had access to Dolores the entire time, that she could have accessed the Sublime at any point. However, she'd rather that they themselves decided to join her. William believes that they have all given into their self-destructive nature, but as we saw with Bernard, they've found their own ways to exist even if they've separated into certain pockets. Hale ends up going down into the pipe and grabbing the gun that Bernard left last week. She finally manages to kill William. Really nice setup from last time, and Hale sits and self-terminates, bringing across a sort of ashes to ashes image as she crushes her pearl. Caleb gets a tearful goodbye with his daughter, and Frankie goes off to start something new, whilst Hale gives Dolores this opportunity too. We see her name as the storyteller, and in this new world, she starts afresh. Now, got a lot of WandaVision vibes here, with her Teddy recreation from memory slowly disappearing. He was very much a representation of the Dolores subconscious within her that guided her on a path to escaping. Now, Teddy does exist in the Sublime, and there are hints that she could meet with him once more.
Teddy is real. And he's out there somewhere in the Sublime.
Whereas William was a nihilist, Dolores is an optimist that believes humanity can still be saved. Now you might even be wondering, how can we be saved if we're already wiped out? And that takes us to theory time. So it is possible that this might even be just one big test within a simulation being run by a character like Arnold or Ford to see how things will end up turning out. If there's still a chance humans can be saved, then this might just be running through the outcome so that we can see how to avoid our potential downfall in the future. I think people would be angry if the entire thing was revealed to be one big probability test, but we have seen this later throughout the series with Rehoboam and also Bernard. This would explain how humanity is able to be saved, which it might not happen yet, but that's what happens when we're in theory time. Oh, what happened there? Now, Dolores also drops this line about how humanity will only live as long as the last person who remembers them. This is a callback to it being said earlier in the series. Now, Dolores ends up preserving sentient life in her own world, and she starts everything up once more. We see the piano begin to play, and the scene almost rolls out beat for beat like how it did in the first season.
Maybe this time we'll set ourselves free.
In the end, it was just one big Westworld, and I really enjoyed the way that it closed out. Now, I don't know if this being a sim robs the stakes for next time, but they might end up having this whilst also playing out elements of Frankie's future in the real world, if it's even the real world. Either way though, I think they stuck the landing on a lot of things here, and it ties it up pretty well. Now, as for my thoughts on the season, I think this has been one of the strongest ones in the entire run. They really recaptured what made Westworld special, and it was something that was filled with mystery, really big twists no one could have predicted, and some high-level concepts that the show expertly picks apart. Whenever I see the park stuff, I always think about how we ourselves are trapped in our own loops and going through the motions, which I think the series also examines really well. I do wish it was longer, as I feel the last couple of episodes kind of went full steam ahead after what had been a slower build, and I just wish we'd seen more of the inner workings of the park like what we had in season 1. There was a lot of horror to what was going on there, with humans being trapped, tortured, and used much in the same way that they'd used the hosts. One image that really stuck out to me was the pianist's fingers bleeding because of how much Hale had forced him to hit the keys. There was also the chilling dinner scene with William, and I think just a couple more moments that showcased the true horror of what was really going on there would have made the series even more gripping. It would have shown why the hosts really didn't want to continue that way, and would also nicely complement the earlier seasons. What we got though was still really strong, and this massively got things back on track. Now, from what I've read, viewership for this entry has been down, so I do hope that word of mouth spreads like the flies and it picks up an audience. It's been said for years now that they wanted to do 5 seasons of the show, and HBO Max have committed to delivering this. I really hope that they stick to this promise, as I think it deserves another one that wraps it all up, and I kinda like how almost all the seasons have been pretty self-contained. They all sort of have their own concepts and settings that work really well in giving us something fresh every time. When I look back on this season, I think I'll remember the things like Caleb's fidelity test being revealed, Bernard predicting the future, and just William going wild. There's a lot of really great moments, and this was such a strong entry. Hopefully it's not too long before we're back with Westworld, and I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's followed us week to week. Now, we are running a competition right now and giving away 3 copies of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on the 15th of August. All you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the comments at random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at HeavySpoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the perfect scene in The Sandman, which will be linked on screen right now. We've gone over episode 6, talked about all the callbacks to the comics and also what it really means, so definitely head over there right after this. If not, thanks for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, let's see you next time. Take care, peace.